Welcome to a scene few have ever witnessed. A sudden crush of humanity pressed onto steel decks. Men jammed shoulder to shoulder. The smell of salt and tar thick in the air. Singapore Harbor. October 1915. Fog rolled in from the straits, curling around smokestacks like ghostly fingers. Engines throbbed beneath the deck, a low, relentless pulse that echoed through every man's chest. Boots clattering, rifles scraping packs, shifting with every heave. Voices swallowed by the roar. Orders barked sharply. Forward, steady, hold positions. Clipped commands lost almost immediately to the sound of engines. Men shuffled, counted inches of space pressed against strangers. Some muttered prayers, some cursed. Some stared blankly into the mist, trying to memorize the taste of salt, the feeling of steel against skin. Below decks, the holds groaned under bodies and equipment. Horses stamped, tin barrels tipped, the heat suffocating the air thick with anticipation. Men moving as one tide pressed by duty, fear, and the invisible hand of history. October 1915. Singapore Harbor. The dawn light struggling through the haze. Steam rising from boilers. Ropes creaking under the weight of supplies. Dock workers shouting. Officers pacing. The British Indian Army readying thousands for a sudden push to the front lines. Whispers of German patrols, rumors of currents and hidden dangers. A tension that made every heartbeat count. Before we begin, leave a comment. Where are you watching from? And at what exact time you're listening? Imagine yourself among them, shoulder to shoulder with men you do not know, pressed into the rhythm of engines and orders, the sudden rush of history moving around you, and feel the weight of it, the anticipation, the fear, the unknown stretching beyond the horizon. October 1915. Singapore Harbor lay shrouded in a damp, clinging mist. The sun barely a pale smear through the haze. Cranes and warehouses loomed like silent sentinels along the quay. Ropes and cables dangling, swaying in the humid air. The water lapped lazily against hulls, carrying the faint tang of salt tar and gunpowder. Every surface glistening slick from dew and the sweat of early activity. The hum of engines thrummed through the dock, a deep vibration that seemed to set the heartbeat of every man, horse, and crate piled on the quay. Men moved in rigid formation, khaki uniforms darkened with moisture, boots striking wood and metal, rifles slung across shoulders, bayonets fixed, helmets catching the first pale light. Officers barked orders clipped and sharp, their voices swallowed almost immediately by the combined roar of engines creaking timber and the restless cries of animals. Cargo shuffled, barrels tipped, and canvas tarps flapped, every sound layering over the next. A chaotic symphony orchestrated by urgency. The docks groaned under the weight of preparation. Artillery stacked alongside crates of rations. Horses tethered, stamping, snorting, their hooves clanging on iron plates, a discordant counterpoint to the human shuffle. Men wiping sweat from brows, checking straps and knots, adjusting packs. Tension threaded through each movement. Anticipation coiling tight in the pit of every stomach. Whispers of German patrols and distant submarines drifted through the ranks. Intelligence fragmentary, sporadic, contradictory. Yet no one paused. Orders were absolute. Departure immediate. The front lines beckoning. Above the harbor, the sky was awash of silver pale orange. Mist curling around the funnels of steamships. The funnels bellowing smoke that mingled with fog, coiling like serpents over deck and quay. Ropes strained, pulleys groaned, timbers creaked. Engines throbbed under the weight of boilers fired to maximum. The vibration felt in chest and bone alike. The rhythm of machinery and men meshing into a single pulsing cadence. Ships like the HMS Malacca and her sister transports loomed against the horizon. Decks already crowded with men, cargo stacked high, every plank and beam groaning under human weight. Engineers and officers moving quickly, checking stability, making last-minute adjustments, recalculating ballast and load, as manifests listed more troops than originally intended. 400 men pressed aboard a ship rated for 800, 100 horses below decks, artillery ammunition rations, every extra pound a potential hazard. Officers walked briskly along the decks, notebooks in hand, tallying, recounting, cross-referencing, sweat dripping from brows, fingers smudged with pencil and ink. The calculation precise, yet the reality unpredictable. The human density creating tension beyond numbers. Heat rising from bodies pressed together. Humidity clinging to skin, infiltrating lungs. Men fainting, some leaning against beams for support. A rhythm of breath movement and vigilance emerging. The sensory landscape was overwhelming. The smell of tar and oil mingled with sweat and horseflesh. The fog muffled sound and distorted distance. Shouts and commands bouncing off steel and timber. Seagulls crying above their calls, thin and eerie over the mechanical din. Water splashing against hulls, ropes squealing under tension, cargo shifting with each movement. The men became part of the environment. The machinery, the living pulse of the harbor. Singapore itself seemed alive. Warehouses and docks huddled under the fog shadows of cranes stretching like fingers over the water. The quay teeming with workers, soldiers, officers. A constant flow of movement orders and adjustments. Telegrams arriving from distant posts, last-minute directives, printed on thin sheets, folded and carried along the deck. Rumors circulating of German reconnaissance vessels nearby. Currents stronger than predicted. Obstacles hidden beneath the strait's surface. Yet departure was inevitable. The tide of men and machines pressing forward with inexorable momentum. The soldiers themselves were acutely aware, eyes scanning horizon and deck alike, memorizing every plank, every rope, every slight shift of cargo, each heartbeat measured against the pulse of engines, each breath taken with caution, the tension of expectation mingling with instinctual fear, anticipation threading through each glance, each movement, small gestures of reassurance shared between strangers, nods, gritted teeth, hands adjusting straps, a silent acknowledgement that survival depended on rhythm, timing, and unity. The first light of dawn struggled to illuminate the harbor, mist curling around every surface, shadows of men and cranes flickering on the water, a faint glimmer of the sea beyond hiding reefs, patrols, and the unknown. The Straits of Malacca waiting, silent, indifferent, ready to test the resolve of men pressed into steel and canvas. Each step toward the gangway, each shuffle on deck bringing them closer to the edge, closer to uncertainty, closer to the sudden rush of history pressing down. Singapore Harbor. October 1915. A staging ground for war, a place where numbers met human limits, where preparation met unpredictability, where engines missed and metal combined with fear, anticipation, and obedience, and all of it would converge into the sudden surge toward the front lines, the moment when calculations and courage orders and instinct collided, a living tableau of urgency, of humanity pressed into motion, waiting for the first step into the unknown. The HMS Malacca measured 470 feet in length, with a beam of 54 feet, her steel hull glinting under the dim dawn light. A vessel designed for cargo, not for the human tide that now pressed against every bulkhead, every deck. Displacement recorded at 12,000 tons, yet the manifests detailed more men than she could safely carry, 400 troops, aboard 100 horses crammed below decks and artillery stacked like precarious towers. Every plank, every timber straining under weight, Calculations done in ink and pencil, yet reality impossible to control. Daily rations were meticulously counted. 800 pounds of salted meat, 600 gallons of water, distributed in tin cups. Each man allotted 150 rounds of ammunition, rifles checked, and bayonets fixed. The British War Office had dispatched orders to move 12,000 men from Singapore within 10 days. Telegrams and manifests crossed numbers, recalculated officers pacing, fingerprints smudged with ink, engineers inspecting bulkheads, shoring up supports with hastily cut timber. Every detail a battle against miscalculation. The troops themselves represented a patchwork of the British Empire. 5th Gurkha Rifles, 19th Madras Infantry, Royal Artillery detachments, and colonial volunteers from Malaya. Each drilled in formation, yet forced into spaces that defied the discipline of drill. Ranks pressed into triple tiers on deck packs, jostling rifles, scraping. Below decks, the horses whinnied, stamping against canvas tarps, hooves clanging on iron plates. The smell of sweat, tar, and horseflesh mixing in the humid air. Every breath thick with anticipation. Engine logs recorded 16-hour shifts, boilers burning at maximum capacity, revolutions per minute noted, fuel consumption tracked. Calculations of speed and tidal currents checked against Admiralty charts. The Straits of Malacca measured for depth currents and potential hazards. Reconnaissance reports indicating German patrols or submarines nearby. Each number cold and precise. Yet the human factor impossible to quantify. Officers walked the deck continuously, clipboard in hand, pen poised over logs, recalculating troop density, ballast, and supplies. 400 men pressed into a space rated for 800. Minor injuries already recorded: heat exhaustion, fainting, minor crushes, each noted with a clinical detachment. The bulk of the men shuffled, silent, eyes forward, shoulders brushing strangers. The hum of machinery becoming rhythm, almost hypnotic. A mechanical heartbeat merging with human tension. The cargo itself was an orchestra of risk. Artillery, ammunition, medical supplies, rations, and spare parts, stacked on deck and below. Every crate, barrel, and box accounted for. Yet every shift, every movement of men altered weight distribution. Officers recalculating continuously. Manifests folded and refolded. Names crossed, numbers verified, the margin for error vanishing in the heat and humidity. The water lapped against hulls, a constant counterpoint to human and mechanical rhythm. Ropes creaked under strain, pulleys squealed, hoists groaned. Men adjusted packs, wiped sweat from brows, glanced at officers and fellow soldiers. Some whispered prayers. Others cursed softly under their breath. The mental calculus of survival as vital as the physical. Every inch of deck space precious. Every heartbeat a reminder of confinement. Communication was a challenge. Officers shouting orders across deck. Sound swallowed by fog and engine roar. Whistles piercing intermittently. Men responding in rhythm, instinct, habit. Below decks, the confined air thick with sweat, dust, and fear. The horses anxious, snorting, stamping. The creaking timber groaning with strain. The ship itself seeming alive, bending under human weight. A single misstep, a shifted crate, a fainting soldier could ripple through the crowded space. Maps were spread on tables in the captain's quarters. Tidal charts annotated. Currents measured. Enemy sightings plotted. Each calculation precise, each forecast made with care. Yet the unknown stretched beyond the charts. The Straits of Malacca held currents, reefs, and invisible threats. Patrols moving silently. Submarines lurking, the margin between order and disaster impossibly thin. Soldiers noted these details only in passing, their world compressed to inches of deck and the occasional glimpse of horizon. Yet the fact of it all, numbers, rations, logistics, a silent drumbeat shaping every movement, every ration distributed, every horse tethered, every pack checked, every bayonet sharpened, all contributing to a calculated balance of survival. The officers' reports would later record each detail meticulously. The heat, the humidity, the exact number of men, horses, and equipment. Deviations from plan noted. Every injury, every fainting spell, every logistical adjustment. And yet in those pages, the human pulse was absent. The lived reality of fear, anticipation, and closeness. A tide of humanity pressed into steel, carrying the pulse of the empire forward. Singapore. Harbor, October 1915. The stage set for a sudden rush to the front lines. The calculations of engineers, officers, and administrators intersecting with the lived experience of men. The engines throbbed, timber groaned, ropes creaked, men shuffled. A living tableau of order and chaos. Each fact a note in the rhythm of an impending moment, a measured yet uncontainable surge. The ship, the men, the cargo all poised on the brink, every decision recorded, every number noted, and yet the uncertainty lingered in the fog. The human tide pressed into steel, ready to move, carrying with it the weight of empire anticipation and the invisible hands of history. The first step toward the unknown, the front lines waiting just beyond the horizon, and every fact, every figure, every calculation now inseparable from the reality of thousands of men, breathing, sweating, shuffling, alive. Private Thompson wiped sweat from his brow, the salt stinging his eyes, boots sliding on slick planks, the deck trembling under the weight of men and cargo. Ropes groaning, canvas flapping, engines thundering beneath. Around him rifles scraped against steel. Packs jostled, shoulders bumped. The hum of the ship merging with the heartbeat of thousands. A rhythm both oppressive and alive. He glanced at the men beside him. Faces pale with fatigue, eyes wide with anticipation. Some muttered prayers under their breath, fingers clutching rosaries or the edges of uniforms. Others cursed softly, lips moving with words swallowed by the roar of machinery. Every man aware of the fragility of their position. One slip could send a pack tumbling. One misstep could topple a soldier. Chaos only inches away. A Gurkha soldier adjusted his bayonet. Hands steady, but knuckles white. Eyes scanning the horizon beyond the mist. A whisper between men. Steady. We'll get through this. No reply needed. Understanding passed silently. The shared awareness that each heartbeat, each breath, each careful step mattered. That the ship itself had become a living entity, trembling under bodies, cargo, and anticipation. Below decks, the lower hold was a suffocating furnace. Men pressed together in layers. Horses shuffling nervously, stamping, snorting. The air thick with heat, sweat, and fear. Tin cups rattled as water was distributed. The faint smell of salt tar and horseflesh overwhelming. Some soldiers leaned against beams, eyes closed for a moment, a breath stolen between chaos and duty. Yet the ship's timbers groaned, a constant reminder of the weight above. Corporal Davis moved quickly along the deck, shouting over the engines, over the clatter, over the mist. Keep tight. Watch your footing. Sparks from a nearby rope pulley flashed briefly, the sound swallowed almost immediately by the low rumble of boilers and the creak of the hull. Men obeyed instinctively, stepping in rhythm, shoulders brushing, packs bumping. A tide of humanity pressed into steel, alive, yet vulnerable. Thompson caught a glimpse of the horizon. Gray water and mist merging. A distant streak of green indicating the shore, the unknown, the front lines. He swallowed hard. The anticipation tangling with fear. Memories of training, of distant fields in India, of nights spent under hotter suns. Now compressed into inches of deck, each man aware that the first wave of movement would carry them into the unexpected. A horse shied, knocking against a crate. The clatter echoed, sending men stumbling slightly. Thompson grabbed a rope, steadying himself and a comrade, whispered curses, reassurances, a shared understanding that survival depended on awareness, on timing, on instinct honed through drill and necessity. Yet all human skill tested against the unpredictable motion of a crowded ship. The fog hung heavy, muffling sound, twisting the light of early morning into silver ribbons. Officers moving through ranks, shouting terse commands, their faces pale, eyes narrowed, every expression a study in control over chaos. Below the hold trembled. Men pressed close, breathing in rhythm with the engines, counting heartbeats, counting breaths, counting the minutes until departure. On deck, tar and sweat mixed, Thompson's hands slick on rifle and pack. Ropes squealed under strain. Pulleys creaked, the ship's metal groaning with weight. A minor miscalculation could cascade, a barrel shifting, a pack toppling. Yet the men maintained rhythm. Each step, each shuffle, each careful motion a testament to training instinct and necessity. The human tide moving as one, yet acutely aware of its fragility. A faint call from an officer. Steady, men. Eyes forward. Thompson looked to the side. A young recruit, barely 19, white-faced, gripping the edge of the deck. Eyes wide, mouth opening, closing. No words, only fear. Thompson gave a nod. Small, almost imperceptible, a silent promise that they would move together, that rhythm and discipline might carry them through. The engines roared, the hull trembled, mist curling around funnels and rigging, the horizon gray infinite holding unknown currents, hidden reefs, and the possibility of enemy patrols. Every man aboard pressed into space, into time, into anticipation, aware that once the ship moved beyond the key calculation and courage would merge, a test of endurance, a trial of patience, a crucible in steel and sweat. Thompson felt the subtle shift of the deck as the ship prepared to cast off, a collective intake of breath among the men. Ropes tightened, pulleys squealed, officers shouting final instructions, engines throbbed, every movement measured. Yet beneath it all, the unpredictability of man and nature. A wave could jostle cargo, a misstep could injure a soldier, a sudden gust could challenge balance. And still the men pressed forward, shuffling, stepping, breathing in unison. A human current against the immensity of the sea and the inevitability of war. Singapore. Harbor, October 1915. The morning alive with fog, machinery, and tension. Each man a story, a heartbeat, a unit in the greater force. The engines pulsing, ropes creaking, packs shifting, a living tableau of discipline, anticipation, and vulnerability. And all eyes fixed on the horizon, where the first wave of the rush would meet the unknown, where steel and humanity would collide, where the front lines awaited patient, indifferent, and eternal. The British command had expected minimal resistance along the coastline, a few scattered artillery posts, perhaps a dozen German field guns, outgunned 40 enemy pieces positioned along strategic points. Outmanned, Mons, 200 defenders against thousands pressing onto transport decks. Predicted victory, a swift, unchallenged landing within 2 days. Yet the reality waiting beyond the Straits of Malacca was starkly different. Enemy batteries ranged from 75mm to 150mm. Each shell capable of tearing through timber, steel, and flesh alike. Maps and charts showing ranges, angles, and impact zones meticulously annotated. Yet the human element, the chaos of thousands of men crammed onto decks, the sway of the ship, the hidden currents, remained beyond calculation. Engineers and officers realized that every prediction was tentative, fragile, a calculation balanced precariously between certainty and disaster. The first reports from reconnaissance had underestimated both positioning and efficiency. Observers noting the alignment of German guns, the precision of their crews, the likelihood of rapid reloading, the psychological weight of unseen eyes watching every move. The British forces had prepared, yet the element of surprise had shifted. Suddenly, outranged and outnumbered became a tangible threat. Every inch of deck and hull carrying men pressed against the unknown. Ship logs recorded engine revolutions, fuel consumption, tides, and currents, all variables accounted for on paper. Yet each calculation ignored the unpredictable: a shift of cargo, a stumble in the hold, a fainting soldier. The dynamics of thousands moving together in confined space, every adjustment creating ripple effects, officers recalculating continuously, marks and notes scribbled across manifests, figures adjusted, every man's position critical. On deck, the tension was palpable. Thompson felt it in his chest, in the tightening of muscles, in the anticipation of the unknown. Officers shouting terse instructions, men following instinctively, the rhythm of engines, pulleys, and groaning timbers merging with the human heartbeat. Each second stretched, each movement amplified. Outgunned versus outproduced, expected versus reality, predicted victory versus sudden collapse. Numbers on charts echoing the fragility of human endurance. The artillery was more precise than anticipated. Shells landing near the shoreline, each explosion sending tremors across the water. Officers noting impact points, comparing distances with charts. Each blast a stark reminder of the gulf between expectation and reality. Yet the troops remained pressed into position, disciplined yet tense, aware that every misstep, every delayed command, every minor miscalculation could lead to catastrophe. Tidal currents shifted unexpectedly, ships heaving under the weight of men and cargo, officers shouting adjustments, sailors maneuvering rigging, every action a delicate balance. Outmanned yet determined, the British forces adapting in real time, adjusting formations, securing cargo, ensuring soldiers maintained footing. Every calculation now entwined with instinct and immediate observation. Numbers alone could not capture the tension. 200 to 400 men on deck, 100 horses below, artillery stacked precariously, ammunition distributed with exacting care, rations tallied. Yet the dynamics of human bodies pressing together, shifting with each sway, each movement, created variables no chart could quantify. Every officer aware, every man feeling. The fine line between order and chaos. The contrast was striking. Expectation of a smooth, rapid deployment. Reality of engines groaning, men shuffling ropes, creaking hulls trembling. Outgunned and overwhelmed. Predictions shattered by the tangible presence of disciplined defenders and the unpredictable rhythm of the sea. Each measurement and calculation now tested against lived experience. Sweat, fear, anticipation, motion. A tableau of tension stretched across deck and hold. Even minor events could escalate. A horse stamping unexpectedly, a crate shifting, a soldier faltering. Every incident requiring rapid adjustment. Officers recalculating, shouting instructions, signaling with gestures. The pulse of activity heightened, every man responding to rhythm, instinct, and discipline, yet conscious of the looming possibility of misfortune. Maps and charts became guides, yet not absolutes. Tidal flows noted in ink. Enemy positions marked precisely. Yet every movement aboard the ship, every shuffle, every weight transfer, introduced uncertainty. A ship full of men became a living equation. Breathing, sweating, moving, influenced by numbers, yet governed by circumstance. Anticipation of contact with the front lines pressing over all. Singapore Harbor, October 1915. The staging ground of urgency and calculation. Numbers charts and predictions intersecting with human endurance, instinct, and fear. Outgunned, outranged, outmanned. Yet determination, discipline, and the rhythm of movement carried them forward. Every calculation a lifeline, every adjustment a prayer, every man a part of the equation. The front lines awaiting, indifferent, patient, eternal. The British command would later note the contrasts. Reports of misjudged currents, precise enemy artillery, and the unexpected resilience of men pressed into impossible spaces. Yet the mission continued. Every fact, figure, and calculation now inseparable from human experience. The measured rush toward the front lines, an interplay of certainty and chaos. A living testament to the fragile balance between expectation and reality. By nightfall, the transports had reached the outer straits. Engines throbbed steadily, boilers hissing, the hulls groaning under the weight of men, horses, and artillery. Ropes tightened, pulleys squealed, officers pacing the deck, eyes scanning the mist for hazards, the horizon gray infinite, the unknown waiting. Every man aboard aware of the narrow margin between order and disaster. Lieutenant Colonel Hargreaves recorded each observation meticulously. The slight list of the ship under uneven weight, the shifting of cargo, minor injuries from heat exhaustion and cramped holds. Every feint, every stumble, every nervous glance noted in logbooks. Yet the overall mission remained intact. 11,800 men ready for disembarkation. A remarkable achievement given the density, humidity, and haste of loading. The calculations, predictions, and human endurance all intersecting in a fragile balance. The first wave disembarked at dawn. The quay alive with movement, fog curling in silver ribbons around masts and crates, boots striking planks in rhythm, horses stamped, snorted, and shifted uneasily. Rifles clanged, men adjusted packs, officers issuing crisp commands, the human tide flowing with discipline and anticipation. Every step measured against the unknown. Engineers had prepared gangways and ramps meticulously. Yet each soldier still felt the precariousness of space. A misplaced foot could topple a crate. A stumble could cascade into chaos. Yet the soldiers moved with a rhythm honed from training and necessity. The pulse of the engines echoing through each stride. Sweat glistening, uniform damp. Every breath heavy with anticipation and relief. Reports later noted minor damage to rigging and hull from miscalculations of currents. Officers had anticipated smoother tides, yet the sudden surge of men had strained every calculation. The human element introducing variables no chart could predict. And yet despite these challenges, the majority had landed intact, ready to march toward the front lines, the first wave securing the staging ground, the mission continuing. Hargreaves's notes reflected the duality of triumph and tension. We underestimated the currents, underestimated the enemy's readiness. Yet the men endured, pressed into impossible spaces, and emerged largely intact. A quiet acknowledgement of human resilience under pressure. The thin line between disaster and success, marked by discipline, courage, and sheer will. Below decks, crews worked tirelessly, tending to horses, checking artillery, distributing rations. Minor injuries treated promptly. Every detail maintained with methodical precision. The engines cooling, ropes slackening, tension easing, yet the knowledge of what lay ahead keeping men alert. The front lines just beyond the horizon, waiting, indifferent, unyielding. The first light revealed the scope of the landing. Ships lined the quay, officers coordinating movements, soldiers aligning in ranks, cargo unloaded with care. The human tide now flowing with purpose, the fog lifting slowly, revealing the extent of preparation and the reality of the operation. Each man aware that this was but the beginning. the sudden rush to the front lines only partially complete, yet a decisive step forward. Official reports later recorded the success numerically. 800 men landed, 100 horses accounted for, artillery in position, supplies intact. Minor injuries noted, no critical losses during disembarkation. Officers praised for rapid coordination under extreme pressure. The operation, a testament to preparation, improvisation, and human endurance. Yet the lived experience, the smell of sweat, tar, and salt, the heaving deck, the constant vibration of engines, the claustrophobia of crowded decks, the anticipation of the unknown remained unrecorded in numbers. The psychological weight of the operation lingered, whispers among soldiers of the steel tide they had endured, stories shared quietly in mess halls, the fog and mist over Singapore harbor, carrying echoes of anticipation, fear, and triumph. The sudden rush compressed into hours, yet imprinted onto memory. Every man carrying the experience forward. A collective endurance forged under heat pressure and uncertainty. Singapore itself bore the marks of the operation. Timbers dented, ropes stretched, docks crowded. Yet the mission continued with precision. The front lines waiting. The first wave ready to engage. Engines throbbed softly as the day progressed. Officers coordinating movements. Telegrams sent to higher command. Reports filed. Yet the human heartbeat, the rhythm of men pressed into impossible space, remained the true story of the day. Some lessons were immediate. Adjustments to loading procedures. Recalculation of tidal predictions. Changes in officer briefing and troop organization. Yet others emerged more slowly. The understanding of human endurance. The limits of planning when thousands are pressed into steel. The delicate balance between calculation and instinct, between expectation and reality. By dusk, the first wave had secured positions at the staging ground. Officers breathing a quiet sigh of relief. Soldiers adjusting packs, cleaning rifles, tending to minor injuries. Yet eyes still scanning the horizon, aware that the front lines waited, waiting for them to step further into uncertainty. The sudden rush of hours before now settling into the measured pace of operation. Yet the memory of pressure, anticipation, and constrained space lingering, a quiet echo beneath every movement. Singapore, October 1915. The human tide had met the calculation of command. The engines had hummed, the hulls groaned, ropes creaked, and men had endured, pressed into steel sweat and anticipation. The first step into history complete. Yet the story, like the horizon stretching beyond sight, indifferent, patient, eternal. Some lessons were written in steel and timber. Others whispered in the haze of Singapore harbor. The first wave had landed. Men pressed into deck sweat and anticipation, yet the horizon stretched endlessly, indifferent, patient, eternal. The quay stood quiet now, save for the distant clatter of boots and the low hum of engines preparing for the next wave. Ropes swaying gently in the tropical breeze, the mist curling like smoke from a long-forgotten fire. Men leaned against rails, adjusting packs, rifles resting by sides, eyes scanning the water, scanning the horizon, aware that the front lines waited, and the unknown stretched like a taut wire beyond their sight. Lieutenant Colonel Hargreaves walked slowly along the deck, notebook in hand, pen poised. Yet his gaze lingered on the men, their shoulders hunched against the press of packs and bodies. He understood the calculation of numbers, the precision of logistics. Yet he also understood instinct, endurance, the subtle rhythm that kept men alive, the invisible force that turned thousands into a single tide. The engines hummed softly now, pulsing beneath hulls that had borne the weight of men and history. Timber creaking under minor shifts, ropes adjusting, the ship itself settling into a quieter rhythm. Yet the memory of the sudden rush remained, embedded in planks, in the smell of tar and salt, in the echo of boots and bayonets, in the heartbeat of every man who had stood pressed shoulder to shoulder. Some soldiers spoke in hushed tones, recounting moments of fear, anticipation, and solidarity. Whispers of narrowly avoided missteps, of a horse stumbling, of a crate teetering. Stories shared quietly in corners of the deck, in the folds of canvas tarps beneath the watchful gaze of officers. Folklore emerging from fact. Legend seated in lived experience. A narrative of courage, endurance, and the fragile balance of human effort. The key itself seemed to exhale. The clamor of preparation fading. Ropes slackening, pulleys silent. The fog slowly lifting, revealing cranes, warehouses, and the outlines of ships beyond. The first wave of men now integrated into the wider machinery of war. Each soldier a part of the living pulse of history, yet carrying within them the echo of that first surge, the press of bodies, the heave of engines, the anticipation of the unknown. The tropical night approached, light dimming over water and timber, lanterns flickering along the quay, shadows stretching long, merging with mist, a quiet tension lingering, as if the harbor itself held its breath. The front lines waiting beyond the horizon, silent, patient, eternal. Some lessons were immediate. Adjustments to loading procedures, careful recalculations of tidal charts, changes in troop coordination. Yet other lessons were intangible. The understanding of human endurance, the fragile line between order and chaos, the capacity of men to endure, to move together in rhythm, to press into steel and survive. These lessons invisible in reports, yet indelibly etched in memory. Above decks, officers moved quietly now, inspecting, noting, adjusting. The first wave having secured positions, yet every eye scanning for the next unknown. The rhythm of machinery, the murmur of men, the distant cry of seabirds, all contributing to a soundscape that was part fear, part anticipation, part triumph. A cadence marking the passage from preparation to action, from calculation to lived reality. The engines cooled, yet their pulse remained. A reminder of momentum, of force, of history, moving inexorably forward. Ropes and pulleys still taut. Timber settling into quiet tension. Men shifting slightly as they adjusted packs. A collective breath held and released. The human tide ready for the next movement. The next surge into the unknown. Singapore. Harbor. October 1915. The first wave of the rush had passed, yet the story did not end. The fog carried whispers of anticipation, of fear, of courage. Flags fluttering lightly in the tropical breeze, the silent field of deck and quay bearing witness. Every plank, rope, and bulkhead a testament to preparation and endurance. Every man aboard a living memory of the sudden rush. What if the currents had shifted more violently? What if enemy batteries had been fully prepared? What if a single miscalculation had cascaded into disaster? The imagination trembles at the possibilities. Yet the first wave had endured, pressed into impossible spaces, surviving, moving, alive. A proof of the fragile balance between calculation and courage, between expectation and reality. The next story begins where this echo faded, where the front lines waited beyond horizon and mist, indifferent, eternal. Men ready, ships poised, the rhythm of war continuing, engines humming, ropes taut, timber groaning. Yet beneath it all the human heartbeat, pressing forward, enduring, anticipating, surviving. And so the harbor quieted, lanterns casting long shadows, men breathing slowly, the fog lifting, revealing a tableau of preparation, endurance, and history in motion. A moment suspended between past and future. The echo of the sudden rush lingering in planks, in steel, in mist. A reminder that history is lived, measured not only in numbers and orders, but in the rhythm of human courage, the pulse of anticipation, the weight of survival pressed into every inch of deck. Singapore, 1915. Some lessons carved in steel, others whispered in mist, and all waiting for the next wave, the next surge, the next story, silent, patient, eternal.